You get rid of the 9 super PACs you have?
I don't have I don't have any
have
super
9.
PACs.
You want me to list them?
No, yeah, you go ahead and list them.
Okay, come on. Give me a break.
No, I won't give you a break on this one, Joe.
So the Democratic primary debate between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders just wrapped up moments ago. And I have to say that Bernie Sanders absolutely dominated Joe Biden for large stretches of the debate. Bernie Sanders made it very clear that there are major distinctions between him and Joe Biden, even if there are some agreements, and that those distinctions are ultimately going to determine who will be a more effective campaigner against Donald Trump, and when they win, will be a more effective president at dealing with the short, medium, and long-term crises facing the American people, especially working in middle-class folks that have been left out of the priority list from previous Democratic and Republican regimes. Bernie Sanders didn't have the best start. I sort of felt this debate started off pretty slow. It's not like Biden was winning. Biden's cognitive decline was on display all night, as it has been for months and months. But Bernie didn't really go on the attack. Bernie didn't push the narrative. And when Biden has the lead that Biden has, a draw doesn't help Bernie at all. Bernie Sanders needs to clearly win. He needs to demonstrate why he would be a good president and why there are severe questions about Joe Biden as a leader and a campaigner. And I do feel that Bernie Sanders did that tonight. Crucially, on multiple occasions, Bernie Sanders exposed Joe Biden as an out-and-out liar. As you saw in that opening clip, Joe Biden tried to protect his own super PAC using status by suggesting that Bernie Sanders had quote-unquote 9 super PACs. Bernie challenged Joe Biden to list them after Biden said he could, and then Biden backed down because Biden understands that Bernie doesn't have super PACs and that it would be a lie for Biden to go any further. So he was forced to back down because Bernie remained firm. Yes, Bernie Sanders has raised a lot of money, more than Joe Biden. But when it comes to the unaccountable force of the secretive super PAC system, there's no contest that Biden and Warren and a lot of the other candidates that are now out of the race have used them in a way Bernie Sanders hasn't used them. That's the basic truth. Bernie Sanders has built a campaign off transparent small donations from working class people, and Joe Biden has benefited from a lack of transparent hush money, dark money from the rich and wealthy and well-connected. There is no comparison, and Biden couldn't make one. Bernie also hammered home the Biden lie on Social Security, and you guys likely heard this moment where Bernie basically got Joe Biden 3 times, I believe, maybe more, but at least 3, to say that he didn't ever say that he wanted to consider Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefit cuts, that he never considered them. That's what Biden said. But we have audio clips, we have video clips of Biden. I'm not going to show them here because we have them so many other places, of Biden on the Senate floor saying that everything should be on the table, including cutting those essential services that matter to working and poor and middle-class Americans. That's the truth. 100%, no nuance, no gray. It's black and white. Biden said he would be willing. He said it historically and fairly recently that he would be willing to cut the services that matter most to vulnerable working and middle-class Americans. And Biden lied 3 times today saying that he never said that. As Bernie said, go to the YouTube and figure it out for yourself because you will see the audio clips. You will see the video clips of Joe Biden attacking some of America's most sacred universal social programs that have made life so much better for Americans for generations now. And Bernie also hammered Joe Biden when it came to his lie around the bankruptcy bill. That Joe Biden basically said that he didn't like the bill, that it was imperfect, that he really didn't support it all that much, but it was the best we could do, and he tried to hem and haw around the issue when Biden basically wrote the bill, and Biden was being praised by Republicans like Orrin Hatch for getting this anti-worker, anti-student, anti-regular person bankruptcy bill passed in this bipartisan elite measure to attack regular folks when they face debt that they can't get out of. That was Joe Biden. That was not reluctant. That was Joe Biden as a leader against students and working class people. He was proud then, but because he's running for president and the electorate inside and outside the Democratic Party is more progressive, he feels like he needs to lie about his record. He also did that about Iraq, where he basically said that I was lied to. But we know that Joe Biden, during that crucial phase when the war was being planned, but also in the years after, defended his decision, even as we knew more and more and more and more that the war was based off of wholly false pretenses. Bernie Sanders remained consistent on that particular issue. And those aren't the only lies by Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders utterly exposed Joe Biden. And to be fair, Biden exposed himself, because in this debate, as I've noted before, there was no hiding. There wasn't 6 or 7 or 10 or more people on stage. It wasn't in a room full of hundreds, if not thousands of people who would clap and boo and nod and jeer for a given question or a given response, which would distract from the people on the stage. Biden couldn't hide behind the rest of the neoliberal blob, because Buttigieg and Bloomberg and Klobuchar weren't on the stage anymore. It was him, it was Bernie, it was the moderators, and it was a studio without an audience. And Biden was exposed for the weak and unprepared and unprincipled candidate that he is. Bernie Sanders came off as presidential, he came off as honest, he came off as principled, and he came off as consistent on his core values over the past years and decades and generations. That is the man right now ready to be president, because Bernie understands that the current crises that are facing the United States are important. The current health crises. But unlike Biden, who seems to want to separate the current crisis from broader systemic issues like the need for Medicare for all, Bernie is really adept at making those connections. And I think that's the better solution, because we need to understand that the current crisis may still happen even under a single payer model, but the ability to address it, the ability to give regular folks confidence in the system, is to have universal, guaranteed healthcare as a human right for every man, woman, and child, regardless of their age and regardless of their income. Biden does not support that principle. His plan, even under the ideal interpretation, would leave 10 million people without insurance. Bernie Sanders would cover every single man, woman, and child. So Biden tonight really failed to sell me, and I wonder if he failed to sell a majority of people that he had the cognitive strength and the consistency of progressive ideals to bring a meaningful challenge to Donald Trump in the next election. Bernie Sanders exposed all the weaknesses that Joe Biden has. These aren't things that were hidden. These are things that you could find, but that I think on a lot of debate stages, because of the crowded nature in the audience, but also on the stage, that they weren't being seen in such a clear light. Today we saw that. Now, Bernie wasn't perfect. Again, he started slow, and his finish was not as good as the middle third of the debate. From about 8:30, 8:45 to about 9:15, 9:30, Bernie was absolutely on point, razor sharp at attacking Biden, bringing up the distinctions, noting how Biden on climate, on healthcare, on the economy will not do what's needed to stave off crisis and usher in justice. But he wasn't perfect. It was very uneven. I don't think Bernie necessarily did enough to attack Biden's electability. It's not enough to suggest that you're better. You need to go harder at the question explicitly around electability. To say not just that you disagree with Joe and his positions are wrong and they hurt working people, but that those things together make it a clear liability when it comes to facing a disingenuous right-wing populist like Donald Trump. And I don't know if Bernie connected those dots for folks as much as we needed. In this moment, you can't just assume that people will go there. Because if people were ready to take that leap, that A plus B equals C leap, without you having to connect the dots, Joe Biden wouldn't be leading. So clearly, Bernie and his team need to do more to explicitly say Joe Biden is a liability to lose to Trump because of what he believes now and because of what he has believed over the recent and distant past. I am the one to defeat Donald Trump because of what I believe, because who I excite, and because of my long-standing, unassailable principles on the issues that matter to regular folks. That needs to be said more explicitly. So we have to ask ourselves then, is this debate enough of a momentum swinger to get Bernie back into this contest? And I have to say that at this point, I'm wary of making any definitive statements, because I do think that in the middle of the debate, Bernie unquestionably landed knockout blows on Joe Biden regarding Social Security and the bankruptcy bill and many other factors. The Social Security one was an awful look for Joe Biden. The back down on the super PACs was an awful look for Joe Biden. Bernie and his team needs to find a way to use those in ads and get them out, not just on the internet, but on mainstream TV, on mainstream networks, where boomers and senior citizens need to be reached if he wants to have a shot in this election. But you could also say that we know so much about Joe Biden on these regards. We know he's regressive. We know he has a checkered past at best. We know his positions have been antagonistic to workers, to marginalized folks, to senior citizens, to the environment. We know all of this, and people are still voting for him anyway. I'm not necessarily sure if this debate will be what gets Bernie Sanders over the hump back to winning states over Joe Biden, if this will allow Bernie to close the delegate gap. But I do think that this was one of Bernie's best debates when it came to actually hammering out Joe Biden's fundamental weaknesses. I think there's a chance that this race could be extended by the result tonight, even if Bernie still has more work to do if he wants to actually win the nomination.